Hello and welcome to my video blog. Today I'll be doing a review of this new game called Left 4 Dead. It's pretty recent. It's been released in the United States and Canada on November 18th, 2008. It's a game by Valve, who also brought us Half-Life 1 and 2, which are pretty much cult games by now. They have a huge following. It's a first-person shooter in the survival horror genre. More precisely, it's a zombie game. The plot is pretty simple. You're one of 4 survivor characters in an area that's been taken over by the infected. Those are the zombies. And you have to make it to some kind of a safe zone of some sort that's run by the military. And you pretty much have to shoot your way to the end, kill all the zombies, or avoid them if you can, so that you can survive. That's pretty much it. The game is designed to be kind of like one of those corny grindhouse movies, those old zombie movies from the 70s. The characters will every once in a while pull out some cheesy one-liners. So the game doesn't really take itself too seriously. It's meant to be kind of funny in a way, and I'd say they've done pretty well on that. It kind of does feel like you're a character in a movie. On the technical aspects, the game is clearly based on the Counter-Strike source code base. You can see that they've reused some assets from the game. They've reused some weapons. So if you've ever played CSS, you might feel very much at home, because the weapons in L4D behave very much like they do in CSS, and you'll find some of the same weapons too. The game also has 3 different gameplay modes. The most obvious is single player, but there's also co-op and multiplayer. When you're playing in single player, you're playing one of these 4 survivor characters, and the other 3 are played by AI bots. When you play in co-op, you have you and your friends playing the 4 survivor characters, and if you don't have 3 other friends playing with you, then the remaining characters are going to be played by bots, and the zombies are played by the computer. And when you're playing in multiplayer mode, this is called versus mode more specifically, you're playing both teams are controlled by humans. Basically, one team is the survivors, the other team is the infected, and at the end of every round the teams will switch around, and then the team that was playing survivor will play infected. The team that was playing infected will play survivor. And I was surprised, because it's actually quite fun to play the zombies. There's 6 different kinds of enemies in the games. There's the generic zombie character. Those are actually pretty weak, pretty slow. They're not really threatening on their own, but they can be dangerous, because at some points they will rush you all at once, and then you can have 30 of these generic zombies, bashing on you at once, and they'll basically block your way. You just can't really move anywhere, and even though they're really easy to kill, they can become a threat. But beyond that, there's also some more advanced, more specialized kinds of zombies, like the hunter character. This zombie is one that can jump and pounce on you, and when he jumps on you, you're immobilized. You can't defend yourself, and your teammates have to rescue you. There's also the smoker, which is kind of the same principle, but this one has a long-range attack. He can grab you with his tongue and again immobilize you. And when you're immobilized, the generic zombies can also bash on you, inflicting you even more damage. Then there's the boomer, which is this fat man character that can puke on the enemies, and when he pukes on you, it attracts all the generic zombies to rush on you, and also disrupts your view, so you can't really see what's going on around you. And in general, what's going to happen often is that the boomer will puke on the enemies or even explode on them, and then they become blinded, and then the infected team will attack them all at once, and it can be very dangerous, so you have to watch out when there's a boomer around somewhere. There's also a very powerful enemy called the tank, which, as the name implies, is a very big, bulky character that can bash you, and he can also rip pieces of rock from the ground to throw at you. And he's the most powerful, he has the most health, he can infringe the most damage to the survivors. But he has one very important weakness, is that if you throw a Molotov cocktail at him, you can set him on fire and he'll just burn to death. Whether you're talking about single player, co-op, or versus mode, the game is divided into campaigns. There are 4 single player and co-op campaigns and 2 versus campaigns, and each campaign is divided into 5 levels that basically progress in terms of difficulty for the survivors, that is. If you're a survivor, your goal at the end of every map is to make it to the safe room where you're safe from the infected. And if you're an infected, your goal is to stop the survivors from making it to the safe room. And at the end of every campaign on the final map, the survivors get to some kind of a stronghold position where they have health kits, they have weapons, and they have a minigun. And their goal is to protect themselves against a really, really big attack where they get rushed by the zombies many times over and they get attacked by several tanks. But if the survivors can make it through this, they get rescued at the end by a military vehicle and escape safely. And obviously, if you're infected, your goal is to prevent this as much as possible. But even for the infected, winning this last part of the game can actually be pretty hard if you're playing against people that know what they're doing. In terms of multiplayer tactics, if you're playing on either team, either the infected or the survivors, you'll find that communication is very important. Furthermore, since it's a very fast-paced game, you'll probably want to use voice chat in the game because you just won't have time to type anything. If you get attacked and you have to tell your teammates so they come rescue you, you just won't have time to type that. If you take the time to type it, you might be dead by the time they come rescue you. So you should really have a microphone and use voice chat if you're going to play this game seriously and play to win, that is. You'll also find that knowing your teammates is very important in this game. If you know your teammates, you'll almost always do better than a team of random people on the internet because you've been able to practice playing together and you know how your teammates are going to react. You also find that sticking together is extremely important because although the zombies are weak on their own, they all have attacks, the more advanced ones, that can basically disable you, and you need the other ones to protect you. If you get pounced by a hunter or captured by a smoker on your own, you're just going to die. You can't really do anything once they've locked on you. So you need your teammates to save you in those kinds of situations. This means that you basically want to stick really close. You always want to have your teammates in the same room as you or in the room next to you. If you ever spread out too far, your team risks basically getting killed really easily by the infected. If you're playing infected, well, the strategy is quite different. You'll find that the infected are extremely weak on their own, so you basically have to coordinate your attacks. If you're one of the infected characters, for example the hunter, and you try to attack the survivors just on your own, you'll find that they can kill you in just 1 or 2 shots, which isn't really satisfying. And also, the time it takes you to kill a survivor is on the order of something like 30 seconds or more, which is really disappointing, but it means you just can't kill the survivors on your own. You need your teammates to be there, and preferably you need your teammates to attack the survivors at the same time you do, so that you can combine your effort. Some strategies that I found to be particularly useful in practice are what I call the double attack and the distraction. The double attack means that, for example, one of you will try to spot a survivor that's far away from the group and disable him, and then you'll have a second infected character waiting so that when somebody tries to come and rescue his disabled friend, you'll also attack this one. And by the time the remaining teammates realize that 2 people are disabled, it'll probably be too late. You'll have damaged the first survivor quite a bit or even killed him. The distraction usually means that you'll use, for example, the hunter characters to jump around and distract the survivor while a boomer sneaks up on them and then pukes on them and disables their vision, basically, and makes a rush happen so that they have something else to attack, and then the rest of your teammates can all jump on them at the same time. On the upside, I'll say this game has a very nice novel aspect in that when you're playing the infected characters, it's very different from your usual FPS. The infected characters have some attacks that are quite different from just, shooting something at the survivors. The gameplay feels very different, but at the same time it's also very intuitive. I found it very easy to learn how to play each of the infected characters. They basically all have one primary and one secondary attack. It's pretty easy to figure out. The game even gives you advice. It gives you little help bubbles when you play the infected for the first time, so that you can immediately know how to use those special attacks. And the game is quite addictive. The games can last very, very long when you're in multiplayer, like 1 hour and a half to go through all the maps of a campaign. But it's very interesting. To be honest, however, I have to say there are some things that the game could have done better. First of all, it seems like the game could have had more choice of weapon. You explore all the possibilities of weapon pretty quickly, and the weapons are also very typical. There's nothing really original in there. The game probably has actually less weapons than most first-person shooter games. You could also have had more kinds of enemies. There's only a few types of enemies, again less than most games have. The game could have had more campaigns and versus modes. There's only 2 at the moment, which is kind of disappointing because you can play both of those campaigns in a total of something like 3 hours. And then you're stuck and you have to replay them again if you want to play versus. At this time there is a distinct lack of user-created content, but I suppose that will happen in the future. Another kind of important weakness of the game is that you need 8 players to play versus. I say need because if you don't have 8 players, the game is not really fair. And you'll also find that it happens very often that when your team wins, the opponents tend to leave the game. When you start a multiplayer game, you get into this kind of lobby system where it tries to match as many people as possible with you, but the game doesn't have a system to match teams of people, and I find that kind of disappointing, because sometimes it's pretty easy to get 4 friends that want to play with you on your team, but it's harder to get 8 people to fill both teams. And if you're stuck playing with some random people on the internet, it's quite likely that those people will just leave if they lose, and that's kind of disappointing. Once people leave, sometimes people don't join again, so then you're stuck basically playing 4 people versus 2, and then 4 people versus only 1 person, and then when there's only 1 person, that person's just gonna give up, and then you're not playing anymore. So this is it for my little review. If you're interested in buying a game, you don't even have to go in the stores. You can go to steampower.com, install the Steam client, and buy the game online, have it downloaded to your computer, which is very convenient. So that's it. I hope you've appreciated the review. If you have any comments, feel free to post them. Feel free to send me some messages, or even to make a video response. Okay, goodbye people.
Necessary.
Bill, use your first aid kit.
Reloading! Weapons here! Every part of me hurts.
Oh, sorry.
Someone should use their health pack. You're a hunter. I'm down!
Dude, I'm half your size. Come on, get up.
Ammo here!